Absolute Power Origins issue 3, John Ridley writing with Aletha Martinez on the art. This has been a weird little tie-in miniseries because each issue's
Hmm.
felt pretty distinct and different because they're all sort of from different parts
Yep.
of Amanda Waller's life. That said, though, the one through line of it is kind of her relationship with her kids. That's the one thing that's kind of been in all three,
Or lack thereof.
or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I mean, well, this issue, basically her daughter and her sons are both, we don't want you
Yep.
in our life, right?
Yep.
Partly because her daughters learned enough from her to hack into her phone and record her conversation where she admitted she lies to her kids.
Not only that, so that was like I understand what Ridley was going for there. I don't know. I feel like a discussion with the president of the United States is going to be far more secure than a kid being able to, you know. And again, she's not a kid; it's her child.
She's an adult who's pregnant at this point. Yeah,
yeah. You know, then I guess an average Joe being able to hack into the phone. But other than that, you know, this is a book that's also dealing with superpowers.
well, I think that's the idea, though. It's not, and obviously hacking into the president's phone is one thing, but this is
Yes.
her hacking into her own mother's phone. Because I assume she didn't hack into it while she was in the White House. She probably just hacked into
Right.
it whenever and just recorded and listened to her conversations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you would think maybe there'd be protocols in the White House about putting your phone in a box or something. I don't know,
Yeah,
but whatever.
yeah. But you know, but whatever. Also, I didn't pick up on this till this issue, but her daughter's name is Coretta, and then one of the sons' name is Martin. Those are the two kings, right? There's Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr. So that's a fun little piece by Ridley there. I didn't get the other son's name in this issue, but
Yeah, no, that's a nice catch.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the issue starts with basically Batman storming into her Task Force X base, and this isn't quite present day because this is like an
No.
older Batman suit,
No.
but it's basically Batman's just doing it to stare down Amanda Waller in the face and let her know that like he can come in here whenever he wants, and that he's keeping an eye on what she's doing with this Task Force bullshit.
I love that he just busts in and he's in Belle Reve, and they're like, "The Batman's here. How do you get in here?"
Right, and Waller looks shit scared as Batman looks at her, and it's interesting because I feel like that does motivate like her attitude for the rest of the issue, where she
Yep.
is like, no, he came in here to make a point, to prove that he could, to scare me and to humiliate me, and he did it. Like, she feels ashamed that he was able to just come in here. Like, she's been building this for however long it's been since the
Yeah.
last issue, and Batman just made his way in to prove that he could. And she's so hell-bent in seeing Batman as the enemy that Batman's trying to say that he's in charge, and therefore she's lost, her agency or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, he's intimidating her. That's what Batman does, right?
Yeah, but she's too blind to see that she's... Because I think this is the whole point of the story with her kids, is that, yeah, she's doing this, and I think she believes she's being righteous the entire time, but the fact
Yeah.
that all of her kids are saying, you're not allowed to meet your grandkid, like, we're barring you from even interacting with your grandson or whoever, like, that's showing that she is going too far, and she's refusing to accept that she has become something of a villain.
Yeah, she's done this all in the name of her family, and it's cost her family. So why is she still doing this? What's the point now?
It almost feels like we're building, and I guess spoiler warning here for Breaking Bad if you haven't seen the end of that show. But it almost feels like we're building to an Amanda Waller, realization someday, or admission, perhaps a better way of putting it, where she says, yeah, because Walter had that thing in that show. I'm doing this for my family. I'm making meth for my family. I'm being a kingpin for my family. And then he finally admits at the end of the show, nah, like, I did it for me because I was good at it and it made me feel important. It made me feel powerful, And I wonder if we ever actually have Amanda Waller in any way hint or admit that that's kind of what, like, yeah, it starts off for her family, but at a certain point, it's not really that anymore.
Because when we start this, she's kind of just a house mom, right? Like we don't really see her going to and from work or anything, and then she ends up volunteering for the congressperson, and then working her way up now to being kind of the black ops director of the U.S. government. And so yeah, it's kind of the same. She's like, I'm good at this. I finally found my purpose, but at what cost? And, maybe she never has that realization. That
maybe
Walter
not.
does.
I'm thinking if I was to make a pitch for like a story with Amanda Waller after we've had absolute power and it fails in some capacity, then like something that builds to her actually having that sort of character growth. They would never probably do it because that would mean actually changing her character somewhat, and comics don't like doing that. But
no, she is one that I can count on her being the antagonist. Always, you know, when the wall shows up, bad things are going to happen. So, you know, I kind of like that consistency.
So the main things that come out of Batman's visit is that it basically has Waller start what probably leads to what she's using for absolute power, which is she's like, look, no one really knows who these heroes are, but he snuck in here, and she has the realization the way Batman snuck in is that he got himself admitted as a patient, and she even checks the database and says, wait, Malone, Matches, who is this? Someone from Gotham City, damn it.
Yeah, because she says that there was like, what, 12 people that they brought into the prison, and only 11 are accounted for. The one that's not was Malone / Matches or backslash.
Comma Matches. Yeah, she just
comma. There we go.
Yeah, she just did it backwards.
Yeah, and it's just Batman didn't break in; he broke out. We let him in. I thought that was a great realization too.
It's a great reveal, but this idea that she gets them to dust the room that he was in for fingerprints, and like, hey, we found like 50 fingerprints. She's like, yeah, track them all, log them all, and check them against every database. And then she actually orders a team to go to Gotham and just start taking fingerprints. The idea that one day she might match fingerprints between someone in that cell that's, because obviously she'll check all the people who work there and stuff, and she'll rule out a lot of them. But the idea that eventually someday she might actually have a database of all these heroes with as much intel as she can, and the idea that she might get Batman's identity because someone just happens to take Bruce Wayne's fingerprints at some point.
Well, if he ever has to volunteer for something, they're gonna have to take his fingerprints. That's just standard anymore. So hopefully Bruce Wayne never volunteers.
Really?
You just keep that. Yeah. Well, it depends if like you're working with kids or not, but they usually they add that to the database just to be sure. I
don't know if that's a thing. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, I've never actually volunteered with children, so maybe it is.
I just think it's funny that you can trace one of the roots of absolute power to her being obsessed with finding out who Batman is, right? So she creates this database. That database kind of becomes, you know, Brainiac Queen.
Yeah,
right? And Brainiac Queen does whatever Yeah,
obviously it starts off with just Batman, but you assume that after this she starts collecting any little bits of evidence for all the heroes she can find. She'll start collecting in the hopes.
All because Bruce had to prove a point.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, I looked him in the face. I know he's white. I know he's a male. I know he's, you know, in his early 30s at this point. So that also gives you a bit of the timeline. Like, you know, she basically everything we can definitively say about him right now. Here's what we know. So yeah, it's interesting. She tries to go to her new grandchild at the hospital, and her sons basically block the hospital room and say she's not allowed. One does come out after and is a little bit more sympathetic, but, you know, kind of says, yeah, we're still going to toe the line, but kind of says, hey, if you ever finish whatever this is that you're doing, maybe you can come back to a normal life. I don't think it's ever going to happen, of course. I also like the little touch that he's wearing a Green Lantern hat, which must upset her considerably. But yeah.
Well, and it also shows that she's, even in her own family, she's a black sheep, and that like if he's wearing a Green Lantern hat, he must appreciate Green Lantern and what he's done in universe. So she's even lost her family because of her little fanaticism. So that was a nice touch.
Yeah, and there's little flashes to the future here where she's talking about how, you know, I thought I could see the future, and you see like an image of Earth 3, and we know that she was at Earth 3, you know, like a year or two ago, whenever that works out as now. So it's this idea that, yeah, there's stuff that's coming up that, like, she didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but basically Earth 3 was kind of like her seeing what she thinks is going to happen eventually on the main Earth. Right? She thinks that's where heroes are going. So yeah, it basically just ends with this like her sitting there on the bench being like determined. In fact, she looks up at the sky and sees like what looks like a meteor. And she says, everyone's going to look up and see a meteor, but I'm going to look up and say, is that another threat? Is that something that I have to go and deal with? And I don't know if there's like an implication exactly what that is supposed to be, because I mean, it's obviously not Superman. It's too late for that. Like,
yeah, no, I definitely think that it's representative of that thing that she sees a threat. Everybody else makes a wish. She makes a plan.
Oh, sure, but I just mean, like, I was wondering if they were trying to tie this into the arrival of a character that would have been,
gotcha.
I don't know, maybe Supergirl's ship arriving or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm just reading into it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this has been a really interesting little trio of issues that have tied in nicely thematically to the event. They've fleshed out Amanda Waller a little bit, a character who shows up a lot, but I wouldn't say gets that much focus in terms of actual her own development. So it was kind of nice to get a little focus. I think I would describe this as a pretty solid tie-in, and that comes with all the weight that you might attribute to that. I think that would go along with it. So
No, and calling it Origins with Waller, it does. It shows her, and what it shows the through line of what ends up, of what makes her put into the plan of absolute power, right?
Yeah.
Where she doesn't believe in inherent goodness, and that's been kind of what the point of absolute power has been, is that that's what makes the hero stand out. It's not their superpowers. It's the fact that they want to help, and she can't see that. She's very cynical.
Yeah.
Is that, you know. So I do like that it sets her her frame of mind into that.
I also love the irony that the one who sort of like motivates her in this issue is Batman, when he is actually the one who doesn't have any superpowers, and if anything, she's the one that he should be the one that she relates to more than any of them, because he is just a guy who's determined, who has the passion and the drive, just like she does. They just, she just obviously has very different opinions about how to go about it and what control actually looks like and whatnot. So yeah, I wouldn't describe this as like a great story on its own, these 3 issues, but as a complementary read that fleshes out Waller a bit, I think it's a pretty good little solid tie-in miniseries. Yeah. So, all right, what are you rating issue 3 Absolute Power Origins?
I'll give this 7.
Yeah, I think that's about fair. I could maybe stretch to the 7.5. I think there probably wasn't as much emotional impact. I think the first issue of the 3 was probably the most interesting to me, because it really was, because the 2 and 3 kind of overlapped a lot with like time periods that I'm more familiar with Waller, whereas issue 1 was completely felt like fresh, new.
It was untread ground. Like we had never really known where she came from. She was just a wall usually by the time we get to her.